I have a snippet of code pulled up here from the previous lesson where we had a problem where we were supposed to go out and find the headline from a website that we provide with user input. I'll give you a quick demo of what it does. I'm in the bootcamp folder in my terminal, so I can just run ruby oo headlines, and it's going to ask me to enter a website without the HTTP. So I'm going to say learn.techmaker.tv, and it's going to give me back the current headline from the site. Now, this code has a number of problems, which I mentioned in the article piece of this lesson. It doesn't handle the tags very well. We don't have anything in here where we can handle classes or IDs or other attributes. We can only find tags if they're literally just H1 open and close bracket tags. We're only looking for H1 tags, and there could be H2 through H6 headlines, and it only finds the first one. And you know, we don't have any specs for this project necessarily, but I think it's probably safe to say that it's a more useful thing to, at least in theory, be able to go out and get any sort of headline that's out there. Whatever the case, the main purpose of this is to show you how you can take a really procedural piece of code like this and turn it into something more general purpose and object oriented. So, like we did in the last lesson, I'm going to start off by creating a class. I'm going to call it webpage. I'm going to give it an initialize method, and it's going to take an address, which will be a web address. We're going to give it a attribute reader so that we can access this address other places in the class. And I'm going to create a method I'm going to call page contents. And I'm going to do something here where I create an instance variable, and I'm saying at content or equals open address dot read. Now, really fast, the reason I did this is a type of caching. The idea here is if at content exists, just tell me what it is. Otherwise, set it equal to this open address dot read thing. And I'm pretty much doing this just to guard against calling open more than once, because that's very slow. So, believe it or not, we've got a good chunk of this code up here already done. We're not really worrying about this HTTP business at the front right now. We're not worried about getting user input yet. We may not at all. Okay, so what do we have left? So the main thing is we need something called headline. And I'm just going to copy this business right here and see where that puts us. So we have contents.index, so we're actually talking about page content. And I'm going to copy that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just remove this. And what we're going to do now is open up IRB and play with this a little bit. So back in the terminal, I'm going to clear this and then run IRB -- simple prompt. So now what I want to do is load OO headlines .rb, and now I should have access to a web page class. Yeah. So what I can do is I can say page equals webpage.new http://techmaker.tv, and now I should be able to say page.headline, and it gives me back the headline. So it does pretty much exactly what it did before. So at this point, what I'm going to do is start trying to split up this bulky headline method and break it into some smaller stuff that hopefully we can work with and improve a little bit more easily. So I'm going to start by creating a method called start, and I'm going to just cut this, paste it in here, and I'm going to say header start equals start. I'm going to do the same thing except for I can't call this end because that's a keyword, so I'm going to say finish, and I'm going to replace this by finish. Now if I come back into IRB and I load again, we should have the exact same functionality. Yeah. What this buys me is the ability to now axe these two things and then say start and finish. And that should also behave exactly the same way. And let's prove to ourselves that this is broken if we change it the wrong way. And we get a name error. Okay, so everything we've done so far is fine. So what we've done so far is we've started splitting things up so that it's easier for us to start thinking about how to solve some of the problems that I brought up earlier. So for example, this little snippet of code here in start is responsible for us skipping things like when there's a class attribute or an ID attribute. So for example, if there's a h1 tag that has ID equals headline or something to that effect, we won't find it. So that creates a problem, especially when you're dealing with clunky code like we had before. But now that we have just this one line separated out, it becomes a little bit easier to think about how to start fixing it. To start fixing this, I am going to go ahead and axe this concept of +4 because that's not going to be useful anymore. And we don't want this closing tag. And this is going to be basically the starting thing that we're looking for, and then we're going to have to just possibly skip other things and find the closing bracket. What this really is the start of the tag itself, so I'm going to call it tag start equals. And what that's going to give us is a number that represents the position or the index of this starting tag, or the start of the tag rather. Then I'm going to say tag finish equals, let's say page content dot index, and we'll pass in tag start. Okay, so as a quick reminder, this is what this h1 tag is going to look like, and it may have class equals some class and ID equals some ID. And so what we're trying to do is in fact say grab this piece, and then we're expecting that the next angle bracket will be this angle bracket. And that should be right. And so what this does is it says tag start is it finds this first snippet, and then tag finish finds this, but it tells it to start looking where this is. So that should work. The last thing that we need to do on this is say tag finish +1, because what we actually want is the start of the content in the middle. So I just noticed a little bug that I missed from earlier, so that needs to be address. And I want to show you what happens in the original code and what the problem is. So I'm gonna load up IRB, reload the file, and I'm gonna say page equals webpage.new. So this is what we had before, page.headlines, or headline rather, and it gives me back not exactly what I had before. Okay, so let's just back up. And what I'm gonna do is just comment all this out, and what was going wrong, I think, is that we need a +4 back here. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So let's try this again. Load, page.headline, and we're back to where we were. So let's look up what happens when we put a different site in. So let's just say bbc.com, page.headline. Oh, there were no h1 tags. But I guarantee you if I go look on that site, there will be some h1 tags. So let's undo and go back to the code that we just wrote. And we're going to load again. Oop, that's not what I wanted. Page equals, where is it? There we go. And page.headline. And still not finding any. Okay, so I see the error. So the issue is that what we're looking for our tag start is this bracket h1, and then up here we have the closing bracket still. So let's remove that and try this again. Boom. And we find that their first h1 title is BBC homepage. So back in our code, this start method is starting to feel a little bit like the code that we refactored earlier when we split out the start and the finish piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually break out some of this logic into its own little small class. So I'm going to create another class, and I'm going to call it opening tag. I'm going to give it an initialize method. And I'm going to give it a name and a context for now, which the context will actually be the text from above. So I need to give it at name equals name. I need to say at context equals context. I need to give it some added readers. And basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to say def start, def finish, and I'm just going to copy in, let's say, context dot index h1. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say name, because we're going to be able to pass in tag names instead of just saying h1 every time. And then I'm going to say context dot index, and then we're going to say start. And let's see where that puts us. We should now be able to say, take all that away and say opening tag.new h1, and I think we'll say page content. And then we need to put it in dot finish +1. Back over here, let me quit and clear this. And I'm going to load that, and let's see if we get the same result. Yep. That is as far as I'm going to get in this recording. I'm going to paste the current version of the code directly below the video and the lesson. And I also want to just add really fast that you could definitely do this and come out with a totally different solution than I am. That's part of the beauty of it. I'm just showing you one way we could attack this problem. Next time we're going to go in a lot deeper and try to wrap this up. Thanks for watching, and just be sure to check out the rest of this in part 2.